Hello and welcome to another Beyond Shakespeare exploring session. We're back in Troy today. We're reading The Iron Age Part 2, which is the sequel to Part 1, surprisingly. Um, it's basically Thomas Heywood wrote a bunch of age plays: the Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. The Iron Age takes place in Troy. And this is the second section, which basically has the tail end of the war, basically, as well as going back to Greece, which we haven't, explored yet. On that note, I shall introduce the lovely people who are going to help me read this. Reading Diomed, Paris, and Helen, we have.
Hello, my name is Lynn. I am a college composition teacher by day, and I live in the Northwestern United States. And this is Scooter, who is my faithful assistant. Oh, he's sleepy.
Yep, the cutest assistant. Reading the Epistle to My Worthy Friend, which is basically a sort of pre-intro Sinon and Hecuba.
Hello, I'm Lois Potter, a retired academic living in London.
Reading Agamemnon and an Amazon who fight on the Trojan side.
That's me, Bryony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire, with no sleepy assistant, unfortunately.
Maybe next time. Reading Penthesilea, Queen of the Amazons, and Aeneas, we have
Sarah Blake, actor, writer, and director based in Germany.
Reading the Epistle to the Reader, Thersites and Priam, we have.
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian and I'm living in Hull.
Reading Ulysses and Laocoon, who's I think Trojan citizen. I can't remember this.
Rachel, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Menelaus and Corybus, we have.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu and I'm an author based in Romford.
And reading Pyrrhus, Cressida, and Pyrrhus, who is the son of Achilles, who was killed in the previous part of this whole epic story. Cressida and a soldier, we have.
Alan Scott, based in Suffolk. And
I'm your host for today in the absence of Robert Crighton. I'm Eric Karoulla, and this is the second part of the Iron Age. It was probably performed around 1612, 1613, and printed in 1632 by Nicholas Oakes. And on that note, we may begin with the Epistle to the Reader, if you will, Helen, please.
Courteous reader, I commend unto thee an entire history, from Jupiter and Saturn to the utter subversion of Troy, with a faithful account of the deaths of all these princes of Greece who had a hand in the fate thereof. Ulysses only excepted, to whom belongeth a further history. Read freely and censure favourably. These ages have been long since writ and suited with the time then. I know not how they may be received in this age, where nothing but satirica dicteria and comica scomata are now in request. For mine own part, I never affected either, when they stretch to the abuse of any person, public or private. If the three former ages, now out of print, be added to these, as I am promised, to make up a handsome volume, I purpose, Deo assistente, to illustrate the whole work with an explanation of all the difficulties and a historical comment of every hard name which may appear obscure or intricate, as such are not frequent in poetry, which, as the rest, I shall freely devote to thy favourable perusal, in this as in all the rest industrious to thy pleasure and profit. Thomas Heywood.
To my worthy and much respected friend, Mr. Thomas Mannering, Esquire. Worthy sir, and my much respected friend, the impression of your love after so many years' acknowledgement enforceth me that I cannot choose but in my best recollection to number you in the file and list of my best and choicest well-wishers. True it is that my unable merit hath ever come much short of your ample acknowledgement. Howsoever, though you be now absent in the country upon a necessary retirement, yet let this witness in my behalf that you are not altogether unremembered in the city. Nor take it unkindly at my hands that I have reserved your name to the catastrophe and conclusion of this work, since being Scena Novissima, it must consequently the fresher in memory, as you have ever a charitable and indulgent censure of such poor pieces of mine as have come accidentally into your view. So I entreat you now, as one better able to judge than I to determine, to receive into your favorable patronage this second part of the Iron Age. I much deceive myself if I heard you not once commend it when you saw it acted. If you persist in the same opinion, when you shall spare some sorted hours to hear it read, in your pains I shall hold myself much pleased, ever remembering yours not to be changed, Thomas Heywood.
And those are the epistles Heywood attached to this whole endeavor. I just have one tiny question. Is that basically him going, I know you like it so much that you're going to pay for this, but I don't know if that's just me. That was my interpretation of it, Sarah, and then Alan.
The impression that I got was that I just love the difference in tone between the two, because like the letter to his patron was kind of, you got the impression there was a bit of like genuine friendship and fondness between them, but it was very much like a letter to a patron. It's like, oh, my generous, noble patron, my much respected friend. Oh, you're so wonderful. And here is my unworthy work. It will please me greatly, blah, 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 usual thing. But his epistle to the reader is just kind of a bit hilarious, because it's like, well, yeah, I wrote this a while ago. It might not fit with the common age, but I don't really care. It's just great anyway, and it should all be in print. And if you kind of buy a copy and read it and it does well, then I'll be able to do all this other great stuff and edit the original versions and do this fantastic volume. So you better read it. And I just love that difference in the tone, especially with the one coming directly after the other. It's that tickled me no end.
Yeah, it's important to note that he had a few issues with printers before this. So people misprinting things or misattributing things in like print. Not Nicholas Oakes, but also Nicholas Oakes, as far as I can tell. I might be mistaken. Please correct me. Lynn, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, I find these introductions kind of interesting, because the conventional wisdom in early modern literature scholarship is that plays were a very low prestige kind of work. For years, the library at Oxford refused to shelve any play texts. It's just like, it's crap. It's not really literature. But you see Heywood working very hard to present his work as literature. If I get a little backing, I want to put all of my plays in a handsome volume. One would assume a folio format volume with illustrations and stuff like that. Like, we could have I want to make a beautiful coffee table book out of my work, because it's worthy of that kind of format and attention. So, I wonder if our conventional wisdom about plays were lowbrow and low prestige is maybe a little oversimplified, that there was actually some conversation about whether plays could be considered serious or literature at this time.
Well, yeah, as far as I know, there are a few that do apologize for whatever is in print. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Lois, and then we should move on.
well, by this time, Ben Jonson had published his plays in 1616, and people made jokes about calling them his plays works and works plays,
Yeah.
and of course somebody else had posthumously been honored with a folio in 1623, and so these were prestigious volumes. There's no reason why Heywood, who had written tons of stuff by this time, poems, prose, plays, everything really, shouldn't have been thinking of himself as worthy of probably a big folio too. And he had had a huge success. I mean, I think it was Love's Mistress that was a big success in the theater. So I mean, he's a pretty old man too by this time. I mean, he doesn't have to care too much what people think of him.
That must be nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Elizabeth. Okay.
Yeah, it was so interesting that what we were just talking about, it reminded me of Sidney's Defense of Poesy that had been published quite a while before this. But I like the idea of having to kind of apologize for the genre, because the genre, just like the concept of like the essay, the genre had come under fire. And I think because it was broadly entertainment, it wasn't just for its literary value, it also had this entertainment value for the masses. We have this conversation about the value of the text. I like that it's included in the beginning. And it's all this ephemera is just designed to kind of push the reader in the direction of buying the work from the bookshop. And I was wondering if Mannering was well known.
I have no idea, unfortunately. Please, answers on a postcard, or in the comments below this, please. Preferably in the comments, because we don't know it, but postcards can get lost on the way. Anyway, on that note, let's actually begin the play. Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Agamemnon, Menelaus, Ulysses, Diomed, Thersites, drums, colors, soldiers, and everything that you need for war.
You terrors of the Asian monarchy and Europe's glory, warlike lords of Greece, although the great prince of the Myrmidons and the armstrong Ajax, our best champions, be by the gods bereft us, yet now comes a phoenix out of their cold ashes rising, Pyrrhus, surnamed Neoptolemus, on whom for his deceased father's sake we must bestow some honours. Menelaus, Ulysses, Diomed, give the prince meeting, and be his conduct to the general.
Flourish. Enter the kings before named, bringing in Pyrrhus, Sinon, and with attendants.
Pyrrhus, kneel down. We girt thee with this sword. It was thy father's. In his warlike hand it hath cleft Trojans to the navel down. Pared heads off faster than the harvest scythe doth the thin stalks, or bending ear of grain. Wear it and draw it to revenge his death. Princes, perform your several ceremonies.
These golden spurs I fasten to thy heels, the same thy warlike father won in field, when Hector, tied with thongs to his steed's fetlocks, was dragged about the high-built walls of Troy.
This armor and this plumed burgonet, in which thy father, like a rampiered wall, opposed the fury of his enemies, by general consent of all these princes attributed to me, lo, I surrender to youthful Neoptolemus. Wear it, prince. Not all the world yields a more strong defense.
Achilles' tent, his treasure, and his jewels we have reserved. Enjoy them, noble Pyrrhus. And lastly, his strong guard of Myrmidons. And with the honour he with these have won, his sword, spurs, armour, guard, pavilion, be by his valiant son much dignified.
Or I touch the handle of his sword, or to my knightly spurs direct my eyes, lace this rich armour to my youthful sides, or roof mine head within this warlike tent, make proof of this his plumed burgonet, or take on me the leading of his guard. Witness you, Grecian princes, what I vow, by Saturn's son, the sire of Aegeus, begot on fair Europa by their issue, the second judge, placed upon the infernal bench, I would descend to Peleus, and from him even to my natural father, with whose honour I join my mother Demades, and in my vengeful oath include them all, till Priam be compelled to shut his gates for want of men. I'll be as merciless as untamed lions and the flesh-fed bears. Blood shall look brighter in young Pyrrhus' eyes than dissolved crystal, till old Priam's hairs be dyed in gore, till Hecuba's reverend locks be gulled in slaughter. All their sons and daughters, subjects and city, quite confused in ruin, bow to our merciless fury. I'll not leave this black and fatal siege, and this I swear, as I am prince and great Achilles' heir.
Even in thy looks I read the sack of Troy and Priam's tragedy. Welcome, sweet Pyrrhus, and welcome you, his warlike followers.
Where be these Trojans? I would fain behold their winged battalions grapple. I would see the battered center fly about their ears in clouds of dust. I would have horses' hooves beat thunder out of earth. The chariot trees I would see drowned in blood, Scamander plains o'erspread with entrails, baked in blood and dust. With terror, I would have this day as black as when Hyperion, leaping from his sphere, cast ugly darkness from his chariot wheels. And in this veiled confusion, the faint Trojans beat back into the town. I'd see their gates entered and fire by their high battlements climbing toward heaven. The pavement of the streets I'd see paved o'er with faces, infants tossed on lances' points, big-bellied ladies flung from out their casements. I'd have all their souls set upon wings, and Troy, no Troy, but fire, as if 10,000 comets joined in one to close the world in red confusion.
Well spake, bold Sinon, and my lords of Greece. This fellow boasts no more than with his sword he will adventure for, and should that fail, he'll set his brain to work. I tell you, princes, my grandsire Lycomedes hath made proof of Sinon's policies. State-quaking projects are handmaids to his brain, and he hath spirit to drive his plots even to the door of death, with rare effects, and then not all the world affords a villain more incomparable. Then, Sinon, my attendant, warlike princes, I speak this to his praise, and I profess myself as stern, bloody, and merciless.
I have not heard a braver character given to a Greek. And had he but my railing, he were a man complete.
Sure, there is something above a common man in yon same fellow whom nature hath so marked. And were his mind as crooked as his body, he were one I could be much in love with.
He hath a feature that I could court. Nay, will, I would not lose his friendship and acquaintance for the world. Methinks you are a comely gentleman.
I ever held myself so, and mine eye gives you no less. Of all the Grecians here, thou hast a face like mine, that fears no weather, a shape that war itself cannot deform. I best love such complexions.
By the gods, we have two meeting souls. Be my sweet urchin.
I will, and thou shalt be mine ugly toad.
A match! We be henceforth brothers and friends.
Embrace then, friend and brother, my dear toad.
my amiable urchin.
I long for work and will not let these Trojans come to welcome Pyrrhus, great Achilles' son.
Their drums proclaim them ready for the field.
Enter Priam, Paris, Penthesilea, and her train of viragos, Aeneas, Corvus, Laocoon, Antenor, basically all the Trojans.
Perhaps King Priam hath not yet related the news of Neoptolemus arrive, that he presumes thus, weakened as he is, to ope his gates and meet us in the field.
'Tis like he hath, because for want of men, he brings a troop of women to the field. Most sure he thinks we, like our warlike father, will be ensnared with beauty. Priam, no. We for his death are sworn vain beauty's foe.
Art thou Achilles' son, beneath whose hand, assisted by his bloody Myrmidons, the valiant Hector fell?
Woman, I am.
Thou shouldst be then a coward.
How?
Even so. Thy father was a foe dishonourable, and so the world reputes him.
By all the gods.
Swear not. For ere the closure of battle, if both the generals please, with my good sword in single combat, I'll make good my word.
Oh, that thou wert a man, but women's tongues are privileged. Come, Priam, all his sons, the whole remain of 50. I'll make good my father's honours 'gainst sufficient odds. But for these scolds, we leave them to their sex that make they among soldiers.
Scorn not, proud Pyrrhus, our presence in the field. I tell thee, Prince, I am a queen. The queen of the Amazons, a warlike nation, disciplined in arms.
Art thou those harlots famous through the world that have usurped a kingdom to yourselves and bent your sweethearts in a barren isle where your adulterate sports are exercised?
Curb thy irregular tongue. We are those women that practice arms, by which we purchase fame all the year long. Only 3 months excepted. Those wherein Phoebus drives his chariot in height of splendor through the burning Cancer, the fiery lion, and the virgin sign. Then we forsake our sunburnt continent and in a cooler clime, sport with our men, and then return. If we have issue male, we nurse them up, then send them to their fathers. If females, we then keep them. And with irons, their right paps we sear off, with better ease to couch their spears and practice feats of arms. We are those women who expelled our land by Egypt's tyrant, conquered Asia, Egypt, and Cappadocia. These two ladies descend from Menelepe and Hippolyta, who in Antioch's reign fought hand to hand with Hercules and Theseus. We are those that came for love of Hector to the field, and, being murdered, to revenge his death.
Then welcome, Amazonians, as I live. I love you, though I hate you. But beware, hate will outweigh my love, and I'll not spare your busking squadrons for my father's fall. Trojans and Amazonians perish all.
And they exit. Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we should pause here or just keep, because the unit of like them fighting comes a bit later. But anyway, since I've paused and I'm rambling, let's any thoughts on this section, on this introduction to the action and new characters and so on? Because we have had a few. We've had Pyrrhus, we've had Sinon, who meets a new friend, or old friend. Sarah, then Bryony, then Lynn.
Yes, that unexpected romance. Unexpected by me, at least. I don't know. People who know the myth better might have been expecting it, but I was like, oh, that took a turn I wasn't expecting. And it was entertaining.
Bryony,
Yeah, just it makes such a nice change to have a woman boasting in this preamble battle, dick waving. Sorry, you know what I mean though. It's just it's so refreshing. Makes such a nice change, and I really enjoyed that speech from her.
Then Alan.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this sequence. A lot. So the beginning is not an unexpected kind of ceremonial. Your father was a badass, and you're going to be a badass too. And here's some swag to commemorate your father's badassness. Whatever, you know. So yeah, it's the whole sort of toxic masculinity thing. But then Sinon and Thersites see each other and go, "That's my kind of guy." And if you're familiar with the myth, I mean, this meeting never happened in any of the sources that I know of. But the point of bringing them together is these are both sort of the most reprehensible characters in the story. That Thersites never has anything good to say about anybody. He's kind of a coward. He's physically ugly, which is often a signifier of having being sort of corrupt on the inside as well. And Sinon is the one who betrays Troy, whose lies convince the Trojans to bring the horse into the city. So Sinon uses deception to win the battle rather than force of arms. So these are two characters that we don't really admire, but they really decide that they're buds. So that's just so interesting that Heywood decides to make this little scene of like the two shit talkers. We're gonna make them buddies. And then the Penthesilea and Pyrrhus, their conversation, and Penthesilea has so much more to say than that. That also is really interesting. So just like so many really interesting dramatic things going on, interesting acting opportunities, all of that.
Alan, then Helen. Sorry.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm of all the characters we met both in the previous part and in this one, Sinon and Thersites are the two I actually feel more empathy with. The cynical old buggers who don't trust anybody, as opposed to the all physique and no brains, which you get with most of the major characters. And for the Queen of the Amazons to try and get involved in a dick waving contest is somewhat ironic.
Yeah. Helen, then Sarah.
Yes, I got the impression, I'm not sure whether I'm right, I got the impression that Sinon was also ugly, which is why Thersites was attracted to him. Gosh, there's someone nearly as ugly as I am. If he's got any wit, he'd be a good friend.
Yeah, I just love the language. You be my sweet urchin, and I'll be your ugly toad and all that stuff. It's just kind of cute.
I mean, does anyone agree with me that an urchin is a hedgehog?
Yes.
Yeah, Sarah, you had thoughts.
Yeah, just on that, it is kind of cute. It's kind of cute in a horrifying way. But that makes it even better. So, very entertaining. I just wanted to pick up on what Alan said about the Queen of the Amazons getting involved in a dick waving contest, because I don't think she does, actually. I really don't think she does. I think the whole point of her speeches to kind of point out that Pyrrhus is desperately trying to wave his dick about, and she's just like, oh, dude, you are such a little boy, you have no idea. And I just kind of, I really like the dynamic of those speeches. And of course, it's open to interpretation. You could, depending on how you directed it, you could play it many, many different ways. But I think in a way, this is an antidote to all the dick waving. And, if you've got this far, having read part one or watched part one, and the fact that this scene happens immediately after the toad and urchin romance. Both of these scenes in their different ways are kind of undercutting all that dick waving that we had in part one, which in itself, came to a sticky end, because let's face it, Ajax was one of the biggest dick wavers of all, and he ends up offing himself, going mad and offing himself. So it's almost like this is a commentary on what's happened before, and of course also what's to come next, assuming that it's going to go the way we think it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, also because in some versions of the story, Penthesilea actually kills Achilles and then he gets resurrected. So, it depends on which version you're reading. As far as I know. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because it might be Achilles or Pyrrhus, but I think it was Achilles, if I remember correctly. Any other thoughts? Or Rachel, are you pondering, or are you willing to share?
I don't know, it's just an astrology thing. But if the time they take vacation, if they're sporting with men in those months, their children will be born under Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries. And Pisces is a water sign, so I'm assuming those could be, this is so weird. I shouldn't have brought this up. Those could be their shipmen, but Aries is Mars's sign, so that could be their warriors. And I don't know, Aquarius is Mercury's sign, I think, or something, or Saturn, I don't remember, but it's meant to be mental or something. So that could represent their free lifestyle or something like that. They're people that do their book work, their accounting.
That's kind of cool, though. I mean, I don't know very much about the astrology, but I seem to remember that I think the Amazons were either sort of promised to, was either Artemis or one of the other goddesses, aka Diana in Roman mythology. I don't know. And the whole sort of, in myth, at least in this myth, I believe they're meant to be sort of from Scythia, which is located, according to the mythology, where Libya is, I think, that sort of part of the Mediterranean, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I might be entirely wrong, because, mythology is weird. Anyway.
So it would be really hot then in June, July, and August.
Yes.
So that would,
Yes, indeed.
They go off somewhere else, a bit cooler.
Yeah, I mean, fight people, kill them, come back. It's fine. Any other thoughts before we move on to Act 1, Scene 2? Alarum, enter Pyrrhus and Penthesilea.
O Queen of Amazons, by the strong spirit Achilles left his son, I let thee know, my father was an honourable foe.
Defiance, Pyrrhus. I'll to death proclaim Hector was by Achilles basely slain, and on his son's head, with my keen-edged sword and thundering strokes, I will make good my word.
Alarum, they fight. They are both wounded and divided by the two armies, who confusedly come betwixt them. To Pyrrhus enter Agamemnon, Ulysses, and Menelaus.
What? Wounded, noble Pyrrhus?
Wounded? No. I've not met one that can raise the skin of great Achilles' son.
Yet blood drops from your arm.
Not possible. 'Tis sure the blood of some slain enemy. Come, let's break into the battle's centre and to pell-mell.
But Neoptolemus, we prize thy safety more than all advantage. Retire thyself to have thy wounds bound up.
Cowards fear death. I'll venge my blood, though with the loss of breath.
Alarum, enter Paris.
Art thou a madman, fellow, that adventurest so near the blood of Neoptolemus, whose smallest drop must cost a Trojan's life?
Art thou the bleeding issue of that Greek I, in revenge of noble Hector's death, slew in Apollo's temple?
Art thou then that coward and effeminate Trojan boy?
Arm-wounded Greek, I slew the false Achilles, an act which I am proud of.
Fall on the murderer and flake him smaller than the Libyan sand.
If any but myself offer one blow, I'll on the Trojans' party oppose him. Come, Paris, though against the odds of breath, Achilles' wounded son will venge his death.
Paris is slain by Pyrrhus. A retreat is sounded. Enter then King Diomed and Sinon.
Why sound the Trojans this retreat?
Paris is slain and Penthesilea wounded by Pyrrhus.
Come then, Sinon, go with me to my tent. This night we'll revel with beauteous Cressida.
Not I. I hate all women. Painted beauty and I am opposites. I love thee less because thou dotest on Trojan Cressida.
She's worthy of our love. I tell thee, Sinon, she is both constant, wise, and beautiful.
She's neither constant, wise, nor beautiful. I'll prove it, Diomed. 4 elements meet in the structure of that Cressida, of which there's not one pure. She's compact merely of blood, of bones, and rotten flesh, which makes her leprous. Where the sun exhales the moist complexion, it doth putrefy the region of the air. There's then another. Sometimes the sun sits muffled in his cave, whilst from the clouds fly hideous showers of rain, which sweeps the earth's corruption into brooks, brooks into rivers, rivers send their tribute as they receive it to their sovereign, the seething ocean. Thus earth, air, and water are all infected. She then, framed of these, can she be beautiful? No, Diomed. If they seem fair, they have the help of art. By nature, they are ugly.
Leave this detraction.
Now, for this Cressida's wisdom, is she wise who would forsake her birthright, her brave friend, the constant Troilus, for King Diomed? To trust the faith of Greeks, and to love thee that art to Troy a professed enemy?
Canst thou disprove her constancy?
I can. Never was woman constant to one man. For proof, do thou but put into one scale a feather, in the other Cressida's truth. The feather shall downweigh it. Diomed, wilt thou believe me? If I win not Cressida to be my sweetheart, yet have no such face, no such proportion to bewitch a lady, I never practiced courtship, but am blunt, nor can I file my tongue. Yet, if I win not the most chaste woman, I will cut it out. Shall I make proof with her?
Enter Cressida.
There she comes. Affront her, Sinon. I'll withdraw unseen.
A gallant lady. Who but such a villain as Sinon would betray her? But my vow is past, for she's a Trojan. Cressida, you are well encountered. Whither away, sweet lady?
To meet with kingly Diomed and with kisses. Conduct him to his tent.
'Tis kindly done. You love King Diomed, then?
As mine own life.
What seest thou in him that is worth thy love?
He's of a fair and comely personage.
Personage? I prithee, look on me and view me well, and thou wilt find some difference.
True, more odds twixt him and thee than between Mercury and limping Vulcan.
Yet as fair a blouse as you, sweet lady, wedded with that smith, and bedded too. A black complexion is always precious in a woman's eye. Leave Diomed and love me, Cressida.
Thee?
Me.
Deformity forbear, I will to Diomed. Make known thine insolence.
I care not, for I not desire to live, if not beloved of Cressid. Tell the king, if he stood by, I would not spare a word. For thine own part, rare goddess, I adore thee, and owe thee divine reverence. Diomed indeed's Aetolians' king, and hath a queen.
Queen?
A queen, that shall hereafter question thee. Or canst thou think he loves thee really, being a Trojan, but for present use? Can Greeks love Trojans? Are they not all sworn to do them outrage?
How canst thou then love me?
I am a politician. Oaths with me are but the tools I work with. I may break an oath by my profession. Hear me further. Think'st thou King Diomed forgets thy breach of love with Troilus? Aye, or that he hopes thou canst be constant to a second friend that was so false unto thy first beloved.
Sinon, thou art deceived. Thou knowest I never had left Prince Troilus, but by the command of my old father Calchas.
Then love Diomed, yes, do so still. But Cressid, mark the end. If ever he transport thee to Aetolia, his queen will bid thee welcome with a vengeance. Hast thou more eyes than these? She'll fall to work, for such another vixen thou ne'er knewest. Come, Cressida, be wise.
What shall I do?
Love me, love Sinon.
Sinon loves not me.
I'll swear I do.
I heard thee say that thou wouldst break thine oath.
Then I'll not swear, because I will not break it. But yet I love thee, Cressida. Love me. I'll leave the wars unfinished, Troy unsacked, and to my native country bear thee hence. Nay, wench, I'll do it. Come, kiss me, Cressida.
Well, you may use your pleasure, but good Sinon, keep this from Diomed.
And of course, because we've talked about him, enter King Diomed.
Oh, perjured strumpet, is this thy faith? Now, Sinon, I'll believe there is no truth in women.
Am I betrayed? Oh, thou base ugly villain, I'll pull thine eyes out.
King Diomed, did I not tell thee what thy sweetheart was?
Thou art a traitor to all womankind.
I am, and naught more grieves me than to think a woman was my mother.
A villain.
Right?
A devil.
Little better.
Go get you back to Troy. Away, be gone. You shall no more be my companion.
And now, fair Trojan weather hen, adieu. And when thou next lovest, think to be more true.
And exit the two men.
Oh, all you powers above, look down and see how I am punished for my perjury.
Alarum, enter Penthesilea with her Amazonians, but before she enters, we should discuss the scene, because I find this interesting that we've got these like sort of huge entrances, and then we've got these like sort of, it's like zooming in on two people on the battlefield or whatever, or wherever they are. I'm sure that you have many thoughts. So yeah, any thoughts before we move on? Helen and Rachel.
This video is, of course, for all time, and by the time whoever is now watching it is watching it, it may well be that we are living in a golden age where politicians are honorable men. But nevertheless, as we are today, there are certain lines that did resonate. I am a politician. Oaths with me are but the tools I work with. I may break an oath by my profession. Yes, it's quite irrelevant to what we're doing here, but nevertheless, it's heartbreakingly true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Down.
Rachel.
I was just gonna say we've had this scene before. I can't remember the play, but it was this guy. I think the guy was trying to talk the other guy into cuckolding himself by going in for his wife. I think it might be up somewhere on the channel already, but I can't remember the name of it. But it wasn't in Troy. I think it was supposed to be something that took place in Italy or Spain or those places.
Yes, it was two households and they both went to cuckold the other one.
Oh, yeah.
But in fact, the wives knew about it and had swapped places.
The insatiate
It
countess.
was absolutely hilarious, or supposed to be.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
subplot of the insatiate countess, I think.
Right.
Ah,
yes,
yes.
So yeah, that was the comic subplot. Yeah, in comedy, the women always hold out, and in tragedy, they succumb.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, there were continuations of the story of Troilus and Cressida, you know, the one that Henryson wrote in 16th century Scotland, where he imagines that eventually Diomed abandons Cressida, and then she becomes a beggar and also a leper. And there's this wonderful episode where Troilus throws her a coin without knowing who she is. But I think Heywood has made up this bit where Sinon courts her and, you know, uses the courtship to get Diomed to throw her off.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think this is in the source text, or whichever version. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, and also just yeah. Anyway, yeah. I seem to remember there was also another one about not cuckolding, but like sort of a guy who was disguised as another guy who was maybe the fawn I want to say, but I don't think it's the fawn. One of the Marstons anyway, where one of the characters was disguised as, and he met himself.
Right.
Yeah, which was that was what this scene reminded me of. Although that scene was funnier. This scene doesn't play so well, I think, in terms of comedy. I don't know. It could work, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, the guy had a speech impediment and was a jeweler or a merchant or a goldsmith or something.
That's what you will, isn't it?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's what Rachel was going to refer to, and then I was like, okay, that's probably not relevant. Anyway,
but nobody cuckolds anybody here. I mean, it's just that Sinon proves that he can get Cressida to change her affections, but of course she hasn't. I mean, he's just given her an argument that she can't trust Diomed, which is true anyway.
Yeah, and also like they killed her true love anyway, so kind of. I mean, in the previous sort of part of this play. So yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, I know that Cressida is supposed to be like, you know, in some level it's a betrayal of Troilus or something, the story that she goes off and does something else. But I think there's also offered in the text, depending on how I think there's options as to how to play it, you know, like, or how to portray her, because there's, you know, I wouldn't have come unless it was Calchas, and then Sinon, you know, what is it? He says, you know, stuff when he's talking about he says, like, you know, I'll leave. I won't finish the war. I won't sack Troy. You know, that if he's a powerful guy and he's persuasive, or if he has an army of his own, that the withdrawal of forces, you know, could potentially save the city by breaking the pact amongst these kings, and could leave a gap in something that you could play that it's you know, to Diomed, she doesn't really have this loyalty beyond what her father, you know, said, and that she's looking in a way, you know, how Sinon before was saying all these sexist things about her, and that she's this and she's that because she's a woman, that she could be, you know, calculating in a military sense and a loyalty remaining to her country and not to Diomed or to Sinon or to anybody or to love or things like that. She could be, you know, and maybe that's why Penthesilea jumps in the next scene. I mean, this is my first whatever, but maybe it could play into some sort of theme of women who act outside their roles, who meet some sort of tragedy for acting outside what women are supposed to act in.
Yeah. Well, I guess also, as we will find out in a moment, there is a purpose for Penthesilea's entrance here. So kind of alarum, enter Penthesilea with her Amazonians.
Stay. What sad lady is this? Whence are you, woman? Of Troy or Greece?
I was of Troy till love drew me from thence, but since have sojourned in the tents of Greece, with Diomed, king of Aetolia. Oh, had I have never known him.
Would you trust your honour amongst strangers? Sweet lady, discourse your wrongs.
I was betrayed. It shames me to relate the circumstance by a false Greek, one that doth hate our sex, one Sinon. If you meet him in the battle, I with my tears entreat you to be revenged.
How might we know him?
His visage swart, and earthy o'er his shoulder hang locks of hair, black as the raven's plumes. His eyes down looking, you shall hardly see one in whose shape appears more treachery.
We lose much time. Lady, haste you to Troy. And if we meet a fellow in the battle of your description, by our honoured names, you'll have his blood to recompense your shames.
Alarum, enter Thersites.
By her description, this should be the man.
Compassed with smocks and long coats. Now, you whores.
Is thy name Sinon?
No, but I know Sinon, he's my friend and brother.
For Sinon's sake, prepare thyself for slaughter.
Who names Sinon?
Oh, brother, thou couldst ne'er couldst come in better time. See how I am rounded.
Whatever such a pair of devils see, they are so alike, they needs must be allied.
What can these dames say to us?
You betray ladies, envy all our sex, and that you now shall pay for. Girt him round.
I recant nothing. Back me, sweet-faced brother. And now, you witches, varlets, drabs, and queens, we'll cut you all to fragments.
Alarum, Sinon and Thersites beaten off by the Amazons. Pyrrhus enters, of course, fights with Penthesilea, and after this a retreat is sounded. Then enter Menelaus, Agamemnon, Ulysses, and Diomed.
The Trojans sound retreat.
Who saw young Pyrrhus?
I fear his too much rage hath spurred him on too far amongst the Amazonian troops.
Enter Sinon and Thersites.
Why
Again.
stand you idle here and let the Trojans lead warlike Pyrrhus prisoner to the town?
How, Pyrrhus prisoner?
We saw him compassed by the Amazons. Penthesilea with her Bustian troops laid load upon his helm.
Then this retreat upon the sudden argues that they lead him captive to Troy.
Enter Pyrrhus.
Courage, brave princes. I've got a prize worthy the purchase on my lance's point. Sits perched the Amazonian's lopped off head. Upon my warlike sword, her bleeding arm, at sight of which the Trojans sound retreat. The honour of this day belongs to us.
None
but Neptolemos.
Neptolemos.
Sinon, you played the coward. So, Thersites?
If not so, I had not lived to see Troy's overthrow.
When did you ever see a villain valiant? What's past, remember not, but what's to come. Priam hath shut his gates, and will no more meet him in arms. Can you, with all your valor, glide through the walls? If not, what are you nearer for all your 10 years' siege?
'Tis true, some stratagem to enter Troy were admirable. For princes, till I see the temple burn wherein my father died, and Troy, no Troy but ashes, my revenge will have no stern aspect till I behold Troy's ground still swim in pools of crimson gore, Rhamnusia's altar filled with flowing helms of blood and brains, Priam and Hecuba dragged by this hand to death, and this my sword ravished the breast of fair Polixena. I shall not think my father's death revenged.
To him that can contrive a stratagem by which to enter Troy, I'll give the whole spoil of Apollo's temple.
I, my rich tent.
I, the palladium that I brought from Troy.
I, all my birthright in Anatolia.
Peace, 'tis here, I have it.
I'll hug thee, Sinon.
Touch me not, away. There are more hammers beating in my brain than e'er touched Vulcan's anvil, more ideas than atoms, embryons innumerable, growing to perfect shape. And now 'tis good. Call for Endymion's bastard. Where's Appius? I'll set him straight a work.
Upon some engine, Sinon.
A horse, a horse.
10 kingdoms for a horse to enter Troy.
Stay, let me see. Ulysses, you have the Palladium.
I have so.
Call for Appius then. The general hath no command in him.
Let's know the project.
And that Palladium stood in Pallas' temple and consecrate to her.
It did so.
Call for Appius then.
Let's hear what thou intendest.
I'll have a horse built with so huge a bulk as shall contain 1,000 men in arms.
And enter Troy with that?
Oh, doubt you trouble mine invention. I am grown muddy with your interruption. Good young man, lend more patience. Hear me out. This engine framed and stuffed with armed Greeks, will you take down your tents, march back to Tenedos?
What shall a horse do then?
Not gallop as your tongue doth. Good Ulysses, lend me your apprehension. When the Trojans find you are gone abroad, they'll straight suppose you'll not weigh anchor till the gods inform you of your success at sea. If then a villain can drive into their ears the goddess Pallas, offended for a stolen Palladium, will you erect this machine to her honor? Wills you or orders you to erect this machine to her honor, withal that were it brought into her temple, it would retain the gilt Palladium's virtue. Might not the forged tale move aged Priam to hail this engine presently to Troy, pull down his walls for entrance, leave a breach where, in the dead of night, all your whole army may enter, take them sleeping in their beds, and put them all to sword?
'Tis rare.
'Tis admirable. I will adventure my person in the horse.
Do so, and get 1,000 spirits more. King Agamemnon, if you like the project, down with your tent.
Sign on we will.
I'll set a light upon the walls of Troy, shall give the summons when you shall return. About it, princes. Pyrrhus, get you men in readiness. I will expose myself to bewitch Priam with a weeping tale. I cannot to the life describe in words what I'll express in action.
Down with our tents.
I'll pick out bold Greeks to fill the horse. Shine bright, you lamps of heaven, for ere it be long, we'll dim your radiant beams with flaming lights and bloody meteors from Troy's burning streets.
Such sights are glorious sparks in Sinon's eyes, who longs to feast the devil with tragedies.
And thus endeth Act 1. Any thoughts? I find it interesting that, Lynn, then Elizabeth, and
we've talked in previous sessions about the various sources, and there are always competing variants, and there were some things that had complete traction by the Middle Ages that weren't part of the Homeric tale. But Ulysses was always the brains behind the horse. It's so weird that Heywood gives that idea to Sinon. I do not know what to make of it.
Yeah, indeed. And also, speaking of Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses is celebrating 100 years today since the publication. I just remembered. Sorry, Elizabeth, what you were saying.
Yeah, I just thought like Sinon was just this driver of the narrative in the first act. It's just this like bit part character who seems to be stepping up and after he has his interaction with Cressida, she's crestfallen, and then we have him being the brains behind the engine of war. And I thought that was just really interesting, that because I thought that Sinon was more of a clown character, to be more on the sidelines, commenting on the action rather than driving the action itself. And I do like the way all the other characters around him go, yes, that's a very good idea. Yeah, that'll work. I thought there would be some contention there, like, oh, are you sure this sounds ridiculous?
Yeah.
But really everybody just goes for it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. But I mean, I guess they kind of don't really have any other options. They've been there for 10 years. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? I mean, we've seen a lot of action, sort of Penthesilea fighting, Penthesilea and the Amazons fighting Sinon and Thersites. Kind of sad. Well, no, there's a part of me going, should they have been killed off? But you can't kill them off because we need them for the plot. So, I mean, Sinon and Thersites. So yeah, that's kind of Lois has things to say.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they run away. That's why they're described later as cowards. And that could be quite a funny scene. I mean, a lot of women charging on these two guys who first threatened to kill them all and then run like mad. I mean, a lot of this is totally grotesque. And clearly the scene of Sinon wooing Cressida has echoes of another scene where a hunchbacked villain is wooing a lady who, you know, there are echoes all over the place. Yeah. Some of this is absurd. I mean, Sinon is a villain who just likes being a villain. I mean, he says he's a villain. He tries to think of the most villainous possible things to do. I mean, that's his only reason for existing.
Yeah, pretty much. But then, I mean, he survives. That's the important thing. I guess by this point, he's kind of fed up with the other guys who are kind of the masterminds of the operation, so to speak. Or not really masterminds because they're,
well, he's certainly fed up with Pyrrhus, who keeps interrupting and doesn't get it. You know?
Yeah. I do like that speech. I mean, even just sort of, be quiet, young man, kind of. I've got more to say. Yeah. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Yeah, Pyrrhus kind of enters with an Amazonian's lopped off head and her bleeding arm. That's not Penthesilea, is it?
Yeah.
It is her. Oh, yep. Okay.
You're not going to be seeing her again. Yep.
Okay.
Spoilers. But yeah, to be fair, we get other characters who turn up to defend Troy because they've not entered Troy yet. So yeah. Any other thoughts since we're here? I can see that the chat is buzzing, but I'm not entirely sure whether that's related to this discussion or discussion about urchins and other animals. Okay, on that note, Act 2, Scene 1, enter Aeneas and Corybus.
Grecians gone.
All their tents raised, their 10-year siege removed, now Troy may rest securely.
What? They may report at their return to Greece the welcome they have had. What have they won but wounds, times lost, shame and confusion?
We are now Priam, Antenor, Polites, and various Polyxena, Hecuba, and Helen with attendants.
We are now lord of our own territories. 10 years kept from us by the invading Greeks. Now we may freely take a full survey of all Scamander plain, drunk with the mixture of the opposite bloods of Trojans and of Greeks.
And, royal husband, we have cause to joy that after so long siege the Greeks are fled, and you in peace may rest your aged head.
Upon this east side stood Ulysses' tent, the politic Greek.
There was old Nestor's quarter, and Agamemnon's that, the general.
Upon the north side of the field, Achilles, that bloody Greek, pitched, and upon this plain, I well remember was my Hector slain.
This empty space, being south from all the rest, the valiant Diomed hath oft made good, and here, even here, his rich pavilion stood.
Oh, but here, even here, next to Duke Ajax' tent, round girt with myrmidons, my Troilus fell.
Then was this place a standing lake of blood, part of which moisture the bright sun exhaled, and part the thirsty earth hath quaffed to Mars. But now the swords on either part are sheathed, and after 10 years' tumults, wars surcease. They lading their ships home with shameful peace.
For which we'll praise the gods, banquet and feast, since by their flight our glorious fame's increased.
The horse is discovered.
Soft. What huge engine's that left on the strand that bears the shape and figure of a horse?
What? Shall we hew it piecemeal with our swords?
Oh, be not rash. Sure, 'tis some mystery that this great architecture doth include.
But mine opinion is, this steed's huge bulk is stuffed with Greekish guile.
I rather think it is some monumental edifice unto the goddess Pallas consecrate. Then spare your fury.
Enter Laocoon with the javelin.
Why stand you gazing at this horrid craft, forged by the fly Ulysses in his brain unknown in Troy? Or can you look for safety from those who 10 years have besieged your walls? Either this huge swollen bulk is big with soldiers, longing to be delivered of armed Greeks, whose monstrous, fatal, and abhorred birth will be Troy's ruin, else this hill of timber, this horse-like structure stabled up in Troy, will spurn down these our walls, our towers demolish, which it shall never. Come, you Trojan youth that love the public safety, no proud Greek upon this steed's back, or Troy's wall shall ride. First with this javelin I'll transpierce his side.
What means Laocoon?
Princes, stay his fury.
Hark, Trojans, if a jarring noise of arms side not through these deep caverns, I divine this gluttonous womb hath swallowed a whole band of men in steel. Then with your swords and glaives rip up his tough sides, and embowel him, that we may prove how they have lined his entrails.
Enter 2 soldiers bringing in Sinon bound.
Stay and proceed no further in your rage, till we have learned some novel from this Greek, whom in a ditch we found fast gyved and bound.
Laocoon, cease thy violence, till we know from that poor Grecian what that machine means.
Oh, me, of all on earth most miserable, whom neither heavens will succor, earth preserve, nor seas keep safe. I, whom the heavens despise, the earth abandons, and the seas disdain. Where shall I shroud me? Whom but now the Greeks threatened with vengeance, and escaped from them, fallen now into the hands of Trojans, menacing death. The world affords no place to wretched Sinon of comfort, for where'er I fix my foot, I tread upon my grave. The 4 vast corners of this large universe, in all their rooms and spacious emptiness, will not afford me my body's length of rest. Where'er I fly, or stay, or turn, death's the object of mine eye.
What art thou? Or whence comest thou? Briefly speak, thou wretched man, thou movest us with thy tears. Unbind him, soldiers.
Shall I deny myself to be of Greece, because I am brought captive unto Troy? No, Sinon cannot lie. Heaven, earth, and sea, from all which I am outcast, witness with me that Sinon cannot lie. Thrice damned Ulysses, the black-haired Pyrrhus, and horned Menelaus, crook-backed Thersites, luxurious Diomede, and all the rabble of detested Greeks I call to witness, Sinon cannot lie. Could I have oiled my tongue and cringed my ham, suppled mine humble knee to crouch and bend, heaved at my bonnet, shrugged my shoulders thus, grinned in their faces, Sinon then had stood, whom now this hour must stew in his own blood.
The perfect image of a wretched creature. His speeches beg remorse.
Alas, good man, shake off the timorous fear of servile death. Though amongst us Trojans and thyself a Greek, thou art not now amongst thine enemies. Thy life I'll warrant. Only let us know what this horse means.
Greece, I renounce thee. Thou hast thrown me off. Fair Troy, I am thy creature. Now I'll unrip Ulysses' craft, my fatal enemy, who sold to death the Duke Palamedes, my kinsman, Trojans, though in garments torn. Sinon stands here, yet is he nobly born. For that known murder did I haunt his tent with railing menaces, horrible exclaims, many a black saint of witches, oaths and curses have I sung at his window. Then demanding justice of Agamemnon, Diomede, Duke Nestor, with the other lords of Greece, for murder of the Prince Palamedes. And being denied it, in my most vexation, my bitter tongue spared not to bark at them. For this I was observed, looked through and through, Ulysses' brain had marked me for my tongue, and fatted me for death by Calchas' means. He wrought so far that I should have been offered unto the gods for sacrifice. The priest lifting his hand aloft to strike me dead, I leaped down from the altar and so fled. Pursuit and search was made, but I lay safe in a thick tuft of sedge till I was found by these your soldiers, who thus brought me bound.
Thou art now art free, secured from all their tyrannies. Now tell us, what's the meaning of this horse? Why have they left him here, themselves being gone?
My new released hands thus I heave on high. Witness, ye gods, that Sinon cannot lie. But as a new adopted Trojan, now by Priam's grace, I here protest by Jove, by these eternal fires that spangle heaven, the altar and that sacrificing sword beneath whose stroke I lay, since my base country casts me away to death, I am now born a son of Troy. Not Hector, while he lived, more damaged Greece by his all-wounding arm than I by my discovery. Well, you know how the Greeks honor Pallas, who incensed because Ulysses the Palladium stole out of her temple and her warders slew, in rage she threatened ruin to all Greece. Therefore, to her hath Calchas built this horse. Greece, pardon me, and all my country gods be deaf to Sinon's tale, and let it be henceforth forgot that I was born in Greece, lest times to come record what I reveal, the black confusion of my native weal.
And what's that, Sinon?
Where left I? At the horse, built of that size, lest you should give it entrance at your gates. For no, should your rude hands dare to profane this gift sacred to Pallas, rots and diseases, pests and infections shall depopulate you, and in a short, small season, they returning shall see thy subjects slain, fair Troy bright burning. I am even with thee, Ulysses, and my breath strikes all Greece home for my intended death.
Thanks, Sinon. We shall bounteously reward thee.
And see, my liege, to make good his report, Laocoon, He that with his javelin pierced this gift of Pallas, round embraced with snakes, that wind their trains about his wounded waist, and for his late presumption sting him dead.
We have not seen so strange a prodigy. Laocoon hath offended all the gods in his profane attempt.
Then lend your helping hands to lift up that Palladian monument into Troy's city. Levers, cables, cords.
It cannot enter through the city gates.
Down with the walls then.
These walls that 10 years have defended Troy, for all their service, shall we ruin them?
But this shall not defend you for 10 years, but make your town impregnable forever.
Down with the walls then, each man lend a hand.
I hear a noise of armour.
Oh, what's that?
I fear some treason in that horse enclosed, nor will I lend a hand to hail him in.
Down with the walls, down.
And Trojans, now, after your 10 years' toil, day battles, the field's trouble, and night's watch, this is the first of all your rest, feast, banquet, joy, and play. Pallas is ours. The Greeks sailed hence away.
Here we release all sentries and commit our broken walls to her celestial guard. We will reward thee, Sinon, the Greeks gone. Priam may rest his age in his soft throne.
And they exit, presumably leaving Sinon on stage.
So. Sinon, I hope, shall warm his hands anon at a bright, goodly bonfire. Here's the key unto this machine by Appius built, which hath already with his brazen breast tilted Troy's wall down, and anon being drunk with the best blood of Greece, in dead of night having surcharged his stomach, will spew out 1,000 men in arms. Sweet midnight, come. I long to mask me in thy sable wings, that I may do some mischief and black deeds. We shall have rare sport, admirable spoil, cutting of throats with stabbing, wounding, killing, some dead asleep, and some half sleep, half wakes, some dancing antics in their bloody shirts, to which their wives' cries and their infants' shrieks, play, music, brave mirth, pleasing harmony. Then, having spit young children on our spears, we'll roast them at the scorching flames of Troy. Fly swift, you winged minutes, till you catch that long-wished hour of stillness, in which Troy sleeps her last sleep, made drunk with wine and joy. In the receiving of this fatal steed, sick Troy this day hath swallowed such a pill, shall search her entrails and her life's blood spill.
And there ends Act 2, Scene 1, where we are ending today, apparently, with that quite graphic description of spit young children on our spears, which we've seen before in Seneca, Thyestes, which is, I think, somewhere on our YouTube channel. Any thoughts? Or, well, yeah, I guess we can bleed them into final thoughts because we have quite a bit of time. So, yeah. Any thoughts, Rachel?
I like the sweet midnight come because there is something about this that the word imagery really does create, like the idea of a literal nightmare, like that's come into the city. And I think Sinon's last speech here really paints that image of a nightmare come to life, because that is the fear of war, and the worst thing that can happen is that there is that siege of a city, and it does come true. So it's kind of, I guess, poetic in a way, even if it's a violent poetry.
Yeah, and also they kind of have the whole what stunned me at the beginning of this was the whole description of this is where Agamemnon stayed, this is where Achilles stayed. They've been there that long that they kind of want to paint the picture of, well, you know, the battlefield / camp that, you know, the Greeks lived in. Yeah, Lynn.
Yeah, that was a really interesting sequence. It was so long ago, I'd sort of forgotten it, but it occurred to me when we were going through it, there's something so sort of ceremonial and kind of almost stereotyped about that. And this was Achilles' campsite, and this was Diomedes' camp. It sounds like it's mocking something or it's echoing something, but it's obviously something that we've lost. There's, yeah, again, so much going on in this sequence of scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Helen, sorry.
I'm wondering about the staging. I mean, it's going to go well on a very wide but not necessarily deep stage. Are the actors seeing the horse but the audience don't? The trouble with bringing the horse on is, one, it's extraordinarily expensive. Two, it's very clumsy. Three, it could be laughable. I mean, having a horse that can hold 1,000 men is not, I would suggest, a practical possibility. And it seems to me that, I don't know, a shadow on the wall of some enormous horse, a shadow on the back wall. I find it very difficult to know, and bringing down walls.
Yeah.
I mean, sometime during this scene, the walls are being demolished. But once again, it's a noisy business unless everything's made of polystyrene when it's a funny business.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm puzzled by how this would be staged in an early modern context.
Yeah. Sarah, then Lois. Yeah.
It's an interesting question, and if it was me staging it, I think I'd be tempted to have the horse on the fourth wall. So literally everybody's standing there looking out at the audience going, oh, look at that big horse. Because you can't, I do like the idea of the shadow. Maybe you could cast the shadow somehow, but there is no way you can do it. I don't think, unless you've got a massive budget and a huge theatre. And even then it's a bit like, oh, really? Are we really going to have a horse on stage? I mean, you know, I was saying at the end of part one that part one would make a really good audio production because you've got so many great word pictures in the speeches. And this, I think, is one of those places, again, where you actually want to engage the audience and make them use their imagination. That's what I would do with it anyway, which you could say is a cop-out, but like I think in a way that would be more effective than actually trying to represent the horse in some way. Make the audience the horse.
Lois, and then Rachel. Yeah,
no, I'm pretty sure you couldn't, it would be silly to try to bring on anything that was a credible version of the Trojan horse. On the other hand, and a modern production would have no trouble at all doing something with projections or shadows. The only other thing I can think of is that they might have opened one of those doors at the back of the stage and had people sort of looking through it. They might even have had a very small horse that the audience could see at the end. I mean, that discovery space, because that's, I don't know whether that stage direction, the horse is discovered, is modern, you know, a modern editor putting it in, or whether that is what Heywood wanted. But if he wanted people to see a horse, it would have to be a very small one that you were imagining was a long way away, and that they would then, you know, but then it's difficult to see, well, where are these gates then that are between you and it? And then there could be a lot of noise backstage, the sound of people smashing down the walls. There's got to be some sort of equivalent.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of imagine that, like, well, because in previous versions, I mean, I think we had it wasn't the Hydra, but one of the many creatures that Hercules fought, and the centaurs, of course. So I don't know. I'm guessing he was using the budget he had for that, sort of bringing back costumes. Rachel. Yeah.
I mean, I think for the sound of the walls being torn down, maybe you could use drums or something like that for it. And I think if you made like a cutout of a horse shape, if the theater had windows, or if it was outdoors, like in the way that when you do fireworks, you quarter off a certain area further away from where people are watching, you could have it so that the little cutout would get hit by the sun and it would project a large shadow, and it might be cheap enough to do that for the thing, and have it be as grand as you know, put it further away for how grand you wanted this ship of 1,000 men to be.
Very true. I'm just wondering how you make it, well, not believable, but sort of like none of the Trojans except Corvus are going, wait, there's something in this horse. This is not right. I mean, Sarah kept coming to listen to Corvus. Yeah, it was just kind of like Alan. And then
Laocoon was also deeply suspicious of it.
Yeah, he seemed to be a prophet.
You know, so, you know, I mean, it just reinforces my point that the heroic figures that we have portrayed in this play, who are many tens in number, might have a collective IQ of about 100.
Right?
Then Helen, then Elizabeth.
Yeah, even Aeneas, who was, you know, as the founder of Rome, kind of, he was a culture hero in Europe in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, right? So, I mean, Aeneas is he's an admired figure in this period. But even he's like on the wrong side. He's like, oh, it's all over, yay. And it didn't have to bring Aeneas on in this scene and basically draw attention to the fact that he's an idiot.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretend that maybe he was in some, you know, they hadn't slept or something. Yeah. Helen, then Elizabeth, then Sarah, then Lois. It's gonna be hard to keep track of.
Okay. I think this is another case where we've got some missing gods. Because, I mean, Laocoon, as I remember it, was, you see these pictures of him wrestling with snakes and his sons, and all very neoclassical. But those snakes were sent by one of the gods in order that he shouldn't. I beg your pardon?
Poseidon, I believe. Yes.
Oh, Poseidon, fair enough. But once again, Heywood is resolutely cutting out divine interference. And I think in the decision to take the horse in, they were being influenced subtly by various deities to make the wrong decision. But of course, what we've got here from Heywood is that the Trojans so desperately want to believe that this is true, that they will.
Yeah. Elizabeth, it was Elizabeth first, and then Sarah, and then Lois. Yeah, I made notes because.
Yeah. Speaking of the horse and everything to do with it, I thought Sinon continues to shine in this scene, like, because he has a big role here. He has to kind of convince the Trojans not only to bring the horse in, but that he's on their side. And I think he does a masterful job of it. I love his monologue at the end. It reminds me of another very dastardly character in the canon. And I just love the way Sinon continues to shine. But I was also wondering with the horse, logistically, it's a very tricky thing, because to stick 1,000 men in one place, where would they go to do their business and stuff like that? I know it's not practical. We're not supposed to think of this in practical terms, but I just thought there's something must have given them away.
Yeah. Sarah knows.
Great. Yeah, sorry, I was muted. So many questions there. Okay, so I want to, that is such a good point, Elizabeth, and one I have thought myself in my younger days, like, what did they do when they were in? Anyway, I wanted to pick up on what Lynn said about Aeneas, because I was playing Aeneas and I found that fascinating because he was such a dope. And okay, again, there's room for interpretation, but it did seem to me that he was very much written as a dope. And I thought that was very interesting on Heywood's part, because yeah, you think of Aeneas, you think of the Aeneid, it's like he's this massive, noble hero. And yet, you know, Heywood undercuts all of that in this telling of it. So I thought that was quite fascinating, really, that choice that he made. And then somebody, it might have been Helen, I can't remember who it was, who was saying, like, how do you make the whole thing of the fact that, you know, you can hear these, the Greeks, you can hear them, you know, down with the walls, and how do you square that? How do the Trojans not come across as being so completely idiotic that they would allow this to go on? And it occurred to me, and especially tying in with what Helen said about the lack of gods, that line where you assume it's all the Greeks saying down with the walls, you could actually have them singing that, and you could have them singing it in as higher voices as they could manage, and in very, very beautiful voices. And you could make it very, very lyrical, and then it would perhaps give the impression that it was Pallas Athene, because, you know, we hear this like down with the walls, and we immediately think of all the Greek troops going, oh, down with the walls, and it's like, what are the Trojans doing? Can they not hear that? But actually, you know, Priam actually says, down with the walls then, each man lend a hand. And then if they hear this kind of heavenly chorus singing, down with the walls to them, then it's like, oh, this must be a gift from the gods. And okay, it's still fairly idiotic, but it's slightly more believable than hearing all these burly soldier voices going down with the walls from inside the horse. So I think there are ways of doing that. And the other thing that occurred to me, just going from what Elizabeth was saying about, you know, the fact that there were thousands of them, if you did actually play the horse as being on the fourth wall, so the Trojans are all standing at the front of the stage, assuming that you're in an end-on configuration. So they're all standing at the front of the stage, looking out into the audience at the horse. You could then plant your Greeks in the audience. You could have them sort of scattered throughout the audience. So then when they sing down with the walls, it's actually coming out of the audience. And then depending on how the play continues, I don't know, because I haven't read ahead, you could have them all coming up out of the audience and running forward onto the stage, which might be quite a nice, cheap but effective way of pulling that whole thing off without actually without it seeming to be ridiculous, or like it's seeming that the Trojans are just so idiotic that they really don't deserve to live. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Lois.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best known account of all of this is not, in fact, from a Greek, but from a Roman writer. I mean, it's in the Aeneid, and from the point of view of the Trojans, which is what he's speaking from, you know, it's partly that they long so much for peace, and that they're also so trusting. You know, they're decent people, and the Greeks are the ones, you know, that, I mean, it has the bit about, I fear the Greeks even when they're bearing gifts, and the Greeks are treacherous liars, and that's certainly what comes across here. the probability of the 1,000 men and what it smelled like in there. We're not the only ones who've thought of this. I think it's in the, is it the Malcontent? There's some place where somebody talks about, well, suppose they'd all been eating garlic, you know, what would it have been like? And then someone says, yeah, it's too bad, really, because I love Hector horribly. In other words, they were hoping that, you know, if only people had found out. And although it's silly because Hector by this time is dead anyway, but because, of course, as someone said, Homer wrote these two great epics celebrating Greece, and the result is that most of Europe is wildly pro-Trojan ever since.
Yes. Yeah, I think the part you're referring to is actually in the intro. Like one of the characters comes in eating an onion or garlic or something. So I seem to remember there was a smell of garlic or onions, and then a reference to really bad music, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. It's probably that induction. Yeah, I think someone does say something in that about garlic. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just very strange. But yeah, they kind of. I'm surprised how, you know, because Sinon starts off as this fairly, you know, you think, as Elizabeth said, you think he's the clown character, but then he starts off going sort of, it gets darker and darker, like sort of cutting of throats, stabbing, wounding, killing, some dead asleep, some half asleep. Like, what? When did that happen? Sort of, I get that he's very anti-Trojan. I mean, yeah, no, just fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, his first speech is all about how much he hates the Trojans. So
Bryony, you've been very quiet, and this is your first encounter with this kind of cycle. Would we call it a cycle?
No, I was here for the Golden Age and the Silver Age.
Oh yeah.
And possibly the first half of this, actually. Memory serves. I'm still, I don't know, I'm still like getting back into it. I've agreed with a lot, and I've just really enjoyed the language, but I'm still trying to make my brain form full thoughts.
Well, it is the first session, so it does make sense. It's kind of, it hits you like a train, or in this case, a Trojan horse. I guess.
It's only my second session after 2 months off. I don't feel as intelligent as everyone else in the room right now. I'm trying to catch up.
But you are. We appreciate you. But
it's, you know, having your brain in the right gear to be able to join the conversation intelligently.
That's why I bring coffee. Yeah, and Lynn does too, but that's for a different reason. Or well, the same reason, I guess. Anyway, any other thoughts? Sort of, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just thinking that 10 years of siege is a really, really long time. And that to some extent, the Trojans must have kind of almost gotten used to the Greeks being there. You know, there's that moment where, you know, they talk about, oh, that's where Agamemnon's tent was, yeah, and that's where Hector was slain. And they must have just gotten so used to them being there that when they all disappear, they all run off, it just lulls them into this really false sense of security. But that's not enough. So that's why we have Sinon kind of turn up to be this voice of reason. And I feel like Heywood's just kind of producing more and more reasons for because what it is that we don't want it to be ridiculous that the Trojans allow the horse in. It has to come from some logical place. They've managed to survive 10 years of siege. For them to fall now, it must be, you know, quite dramatic. It has to be full of pathos, doesn't it? So I was just thinking about the fact that there may be some sort of Stockholm syndrome had set in. They'd been around the Greeks for so long. And Sinon was very convincing in his arguments. But he did a full chorus.
Yeah. Helen, then Rachel, then Sarah.
Yeah, I've never believed in this 10 years. There just doesn't seem to be enough incident in any of the stories to fill 10 years. it seems to me very much a single year's campaign. And I don't know when the Greek campaigning system season ran, but, say 9 months at most. Otherwise, of course, as some people have pointed out, by the time she was rescued, Helen would be past her best as the most beautiful queen in Greece. I don't say this is necessarily true. I mean, some women get better as they get older, but if you're thinking of it through the male eyes, 10 years is too long.
Rachel had a thought, then Sarah, then Lynn.
I was going to say to what Elizabeth said, if it's such a long siege, and even though it's a horse in this text, if the way you guys were saying before that it might have been a boat, like in reality or something like that, it might have been a ship, that there could be some sort of idea, like, the coming out from this place, they have to be low on supplies because it's a siege, and even coming out and discovering these all these things. It could be scavenging, or like, oh, we could take the sheep out and they could graze, for the first time, and, whenever, or something like that. Or even if it was a ship or a horse, you could be looking at it as a fishing vessel, or should we take it apart for firewood? Should we bring it, you could say like, oh, if it's a horse, should we bring it in, disassemble the wall, bring it in, so that we could then later on tomorrow disassemble the horse there in case they come back in the night, or something like that, or they come back in like a couple weeks, and we'll just have time and do it safely within the walls, and then just remove a portion of the wall, unsuspecting that they're in, I'm saying this in a realistic way, even though this is some machination of the gods, but if you wanted to bring it into that sort of way of acting to try and justify it for ourselves as to why they're bringing these things in, because you've got to have something to cook your food on the stove with and all these other things. It's got to be like there's all these resources that have just opened up, and the shock of what to do with that.
Yeah. I guess you could, but also the horse is presented as a sort of what's called sort of offering to one of the gods. Therefore, it kind of, I don't know if you would take it apart. Hence, it would be left intact to a degree, which I think was the point of making it sort of maybe, I don't know. Sarah, then sorry.
I wanted to come back to what Elizabeth was saying as well about Sion, but I also just want to put in there, if Helen's like 19 when she gets abducted and she's 29 when she comes back, it's like, okay, if she's had a few kids, that might have caused her to be a bit more worn out than she was, but like setting that aside, like I don't think she's gonna have like deteriorated that much, like between 19 and 29 or whatever. But anyway, that's entirely irrelevant side point. I just wanted to underline what Elizabeth said about really this whole thing, how believable it is. It hinges on Sinon, and what I wanted to say about that was to take it back to the conversation we were having last week. I kept blathering on and on and on about the fact that I love the first part of this play because it took these mythical characters and made them so human. And I think, honestly, the way Heywood's structured this, how much you believe in what's happening. I mean, you know what's going to happen and you know it has to happen and it's ordained by the gods, but the gods aren't in this version. So therefore, how much your audience is going to buy in to what's going on and buy into the fact that the Trojans are as credulous as they are comes down as Elizabeth says, to the actor playing Sinon. And I think it's really interested the way it's coded into the text. There's all this kind of language in the text. Sinon talks about the fact that he's going to forget that he was born in Greece, the confusion of his native will. He plays this very much as a kind of, oh, I'm really bewildered, and oh, I'm in such torment, and I'm having such an internal struggle because I am Greek, but no, I shun the Greeks and I am done with them. And then he actually says, oh, where left I? Oh yes, I was talking about the horse, wasn't I? Oh, right, yeah. What was I saying? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the horse. Yeah. And if you present him as this bumbling idiot who is kind of very confused and in a lot of conflict, and well, it's all about this. What was I saying? Oh yes, I was saying this. You have to excuse me. I'm very confused about this. Actually, he becomes this figure. You can then see why Aeneas is saying, "Oh my God, this poor man." It's clear that he's telling the truth. If he is such an accomplished liar that he can actually create this disarming confusion, like I am just so wrecked by what's happened to me, you have to forgive me, then that is absolutely the kind of lying, if you're all kind of sneaky and sly about it, then it's like, oh well. But if you're actually, then it's like, why aren't they listening to Coroebus? But if he's actually this very apparently very frank and just very confused person, then that is absolutely an interpretation that the audience, perhaps especially in these times, could get behind and say, yeah, this is the kind of person who could hoodwink all of the Trojans. And it's there in the text. Where left I? What was I saying? Give me a break here. I need your help.
Yeah, I think that could be. I just like to imagine that, he's going, wah! And Prime is going, and what about the horse you were saying? And then, but obviously you wouldn't do it like that. That would break the play. Then I think I saw Brian Lee waving. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I was actually going to respond to the idea of the discussion about like time and people aging and how does that work. Time is not really operational in the normal way in these stories a lot of times. I mean, yeah, was Helen just like 16 or 17 when she was abducted, and so she's only in her late 20s now? Or is it just like time doesn't work that way? Because like in the drama and in Homer, Nestor is like the archetypical old guy when they leave Greece. And he's still the archetypical old guy 9 years later when the Iliad takes place. And he's still the archetypical old guy 20 years after the expedition left when Telemachus goes to visit him in the Odyssey. So it's like, are you ever going to die? How old are you? So, yeah, it's like, because that's Nestor's type, so it's like time is not really operational for in a lot of the versions of this story. So I'm not too exercised about like Helen's not really worth it anymore because she's 35. So that's one thing, and just sort of and doing a very abrupt segue into final thoughts. I'm kind of like, I don't know where I am with this. I don't know what to make of it all, but I'm really interested in the way Heywood undercuts, as Sarah says, our expectations and who we might expect to be heroes and who are the main actors, elevating Sinon to this bravura part where you get to do everything, act like you're acting sad, and like so much scope for a really gifted actor. That's obviously like the star part, Sinon. Who would have guessed that? That's such an interesting choice. Yeah, so that's what's really fascinating me now is the real sort of twists that Heywood keeps putting on this relatively familiar story.
Yeah. Bryony, did you have something to add? Or yeah, I believe you.
Yeah, it's a bit random and disconnected from everything we've been talking about, but I remembered something that had occurred to me earlier, and then I was distracted. Just there was a absolutely terrible description. I think it was supposed to be of Sign-On, but it was. I just remember hearing it and thinking like we're in a war siege situation. There must be tens of thousands of men, and the description was like, he's swarthy, he's got dark hair, and his face is evil. And I just kind of remember thinking as we read it, like, I'm sure a police sketch artist would love that kind of a description. And then the thing that distracted me is that just after it, they instantly say to someone, oh, it must be you, and it's not. Like, of course it is, and that's the worst description I've ever heard in my life.
That is very true. Then I think I saw Elizabeth and Rachel, if I'm not mistaken, and we should start wrapping.
Yeah, I had a really good point about what Lynn was saying. It's just flown from my mind. And Lynn was talking about, yes, the time. Lynn was talking about the time in the narratives of these epics. And I was thinking about the Aeneid and how much time Aeneas spends in the underworld. And when they go to the underworld, time just disappears there. You know, they could be there for years, they could be there for days. And I thought time really, really disappears. And then speaking to what Bryony was saying, there's a lot of mentions of how swarthy Sinon is, to kind of go with his maybe darkness of his heart. And I thought that was interesting, because I don't recall that swarthiness being mentioned previously. I've looked into like plays with dark characters in them, but I haven't had that mentioned before. I think it says that he's supposed to be the one that comes from Libya.
Well, it's supposed to be the
someone
Amazons,
else?
but I'm not entirely sure he's meant. I don't know where he comes from actually. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, Rachel and Lois. Yes.
No, I was gonna say, like, with the aging and the ages and stuff like that, if when you're putting this on, like how Aliki was telling us when we were doing that thing with like Helen, that comedy by Euripides or whatever. If I don't know, you could work with the concept of an eidolon or something like that, and maybe that would explain the ages and the time gap and things like that you're working with in the psychology and the time movement outside of realism, something that's heavily influenced by the gods, even if they're not physically appearing anymore. Or, you know, maybe you could play with their physical appearance, them physically showing up and doing things, but if the gods are in this, they're acting more like they're in a mask, and the actors playing this aren't seeing them or communicating with them, and it's something else that's showing the disconnection between people and the gods as the ages go on.
That could work. For reference, for context rather, Rachel is referring to Helen, played by Euripides, where he follows the myth of there being a second Helen that is basically sort of a mirror image, if I remember correctly. I can't remember if it's just like a sort of model of her that is handed over to an Egyptian king, if I remember correctly. So Lois, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my final thought is that Heywood, as usual, is a very entertaining writer. I wanted to add to this bit about the swarthy characters, because the point is not only that Sinon looks like that, but so does Thersites, because they're both villains, and that's how villains look. And this is a tradition. I mean, I I remember a crazy play by Killigrew written, I think, in the 40s or 50s of the 17th century, that is, which actually says his periwig is black, his clothes are black, his beard is black. I mean, he's really making the point. And in the Restoration, Charles II, who had dark hair, was actually referred to as a tall black man when they were hunting for him after the Battle of Worcester, meaning simply, dark hair, dark complexion, said, why is it that in the theater, whenever they want to make a villain, they clap a black periwig on him? And he was pretty fed up with this, but it is an absolute stereotyping of villains. And it's got to do with the wig. I mean, we should probably make it easier anyway for the character to double other roles. But the point is that both Sinon and Thersites look like that. And in fact, I think this character that Killigrew wrote about that I mentioned, who was black all over, also is deformed and hunchbacked. I mean, it's just totally, this is what villains are. Haha, so easy to recognize. How nice.
Yeah. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, this one's scoring fairly high on our early modern bingo. You've got the misogyny in there. You've got horrible tropes about people with disabilities. You've got the whole colour prejudice thing. I mean, I think, quite honestly, if you did a production of it these days, you'd either have to do some extensive editing or put so many advisories in at the beginning that would take another third of the play.
Yeah, you have a point. Any other thoughts since we're here? Okay, I guess not. And on that note, I shall end the session by thanking all our readers and, well, yes, and bid you goodbye. And now, base ugly villain, I'll pull thine eyes out.